Human enhancement technologies are being researched into ways in which we can change the very nature of us as humans, and this has important impacts on soldiers and the ways in which we fight wars. As examples of technologies that are being researched at the moment, exoskeletons and prosthetics. These involve adding mechanical means or new limbs to amputees and others to increase their strength and endurance, such as the Tactical Assault Light Operator Suit. We have cognitive enhancements. These involve pharmaceuticals, brain stimulation, electronic brain stimulation, and other means to reduce the need for sleep and increase the capacity to operate under stress. There's also some interest in changing nutrition and eating. Some of the more extreme examples of this are changing someone's stomach so that they can digest cellulose, which means that soldiers can eat grass. In terms of enhancement and ethics, there's been a lot of ethical interest in enhancement for a while. Some of the general concerns that people have around enhancement are changing our very nature as humans. If we enhance ourselves such that we're no longer the same as we are now, are we still human? This has an important potential impact in terms of warfare and military practice, because if our enemies see us as no longer human, then they might be treating us quite differently. For instance, if you see someone in an exoskeleton coming to attack you, you might not think of them as human and you might not afford them the normal concern that one gives to a soldier in war. Another set of concerns come from informed consent, where we worry about whether the subject of research or the receiver of enhancement can effectively give consent to this. This is particularly interesting or relevant in the military context because militaries have hierarchical command structures and soldiers are told to follow commands quite often without the need to question those commands. Another more important or more relevant set of concerns around enhancement in the military context build off the notion of enhancing someone's cognition and then their capacity to follow the laws of armed conflict. Because if you change the way someone thinks, this can also change the way in which they follow, or how they follow the laws of armed conflict, and this is of course quite important. If we look at the history of enhancement, it goes back a long way. The use of nutrition and training to increase the capacity to win a war. More recently, we can see the use of amphetamines during World War II and after that to give soldiers the capacity to fight, days on end, for pilots to fly long flights. The final thing to say is this is not necessarily a new concern. We've got worries about the way in which soldiers are treated generally, humanitarian concerns about soldiers and civilians. What these new enhancement technologies do is shine a new light on these existing concerns and also force us to think about the ways in which we use new technologies and the research conducted around them.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado of Man-Made Survival. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. I really do appreciate it because today is a very important podcast because we're going to be talking about what has been happening or, all the information that has been coming out about China and the influence here in the United States. But I'm not going to talk about the aspect of the political or the political aspect of all of this because there's other things that did come out through all this information that I want to focus on. Because for one, it really proves what I've been saying, what I've been speculating, what I've been sharing with you in this podcast. It's actually true. As the events unfold, it looks like my hypothesis and the way that I'm looking at these articles and the information that's coming out and the way that I'm putting together and the information that is in my head and all those things, when I've come and presented to you, it's actually going on. All right. So that's why it's important that you share this information with your friends and family, because not only do we need to know and understand the information that is coming out, but also we have to do something about it, which is one of the main things that I'm doing this for, is that we need to understand that we have to become proactive, especially in the preparedness part of all of this, because it doesn't matter what has been happening, all right, or what could happen. We must be prepared for all of it, all right? For example, we have been experiencing, millions of Americans are experiencing economic collapse here in the United States, hunger, right? We are going through a period of civil unrest that could potentially turn into a civil war, especially depending on how all these lawsuits and things are happening politically turn out to be. right? There's a potential that we're going to be going to war, which is one of the main things we're going to be talking about today. This podcast is very important. This one is so, all this information is so important, and is so much of it that I'm probably going to have to split this podcast into 2 or 3 parts. So I really encourage you not only to stay all the way to the end of this podcast, but also to watch all the parts and to watch them from the beginning, so you can follow the trend of this information and you can get the conclusion from all of this, which of course is the preparedness of all of this. All right, because our future, our kids' future, is going to be completely different from what we are seeing now. Okay, that's why I want to create this community of preppers under the Man-Made Survivor flag, where we carry on this tradition, this culture onto the next generation. Because even if nothing happens in our lifetime, I'm 30 years old, and even if by the time I get to be 70 or 80, God willing, nothing happens to where I don't use none of my preps, where you don't use any of your preps, we can pass on the knowledge, we can pass on the gear, we can pass on the skills to the next generation, and they can continue on, because something could happen in their lifetime. Some of the things that we have been noticing and that I've been reading to you is that in the headlines it says, this economic devastation or depression has not happened since the Great Depression. We have not had a terrorist attack to the level of 9/11 since 9/11. We have not had, the depression that we're seeing since 2008. All right. What I want to focus on here is the word since. To me, that says that since 2008, we had 12 years to prepare. For a terrorist attack, we've had 19 years to prepare. Since World War II, we had about 80 years to prepare. Since that last Great Depression, we had almost 100 years to prepare. So again, even if we do prepare and nothing happens in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, or anything in our lifetime, all the gear, all the stuff, all the knowledge can be passed on to the next generation, and then from the generation to the next generation, because they will understand that something can happen, especially something like COVID-19 that came out of nowhere, and next thing we know, the entire U.S. economy is shut down. That's why it's important that we teach these skills to our children. That's why it's important that we become serious about preparedness. So please share this information with your friends and family. This podcast has been growing thanks to you. Now we're averaging in a month about, give or take, putting all the social media together, about 10,000 views, depending on the platform. And as a whole, from all the entire time, which I've only been doing this podcast since January of 2020, late January, this entire time we've had about 70,000 views in total. But the unfortunate thing is that we've only had a handful of people subscribing. So I really need you, and I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to this channel, because of course that is free to you, but that helps me a lot. So please share this information with your friends and family. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Whether you're on YouTube, Brighteon, Apple Podcast, the speaker platforms, whichever method you're listening to this, please subscribe to that one page that you're listening to this through, because that would really help us a lot. So I would really appreciate it if you did. I do want to remind you that this podcast is sponsored by you through the ManMadeSurvivalStore.com. The Man-Made Survival Store has everything that you're going to need in order for you to survive an EMP, a nuclear disaster, or you're just trying to find preps, you're trying to find gear, you're trying to, just get camping gear, whatever it is, you're going to find it in the store, and it's going to serve its purpose by the time when the time comes that you need it. So I would really encourage you to go in there and check it out. Also want to remind you that I'm giving books away for free. The title of the book is Preppers Secrete Cache. You can go to the main page of the store, and you can click on the link there, and it'll take you to where you fill out your information. The book is absolutely free. All we need your help is with shipping. The book retails for $24.99, and the shipping is $9.99. So you are in fact getting it for free. And right now is the perfect time for you to get a free book and give it out to a co-worker, to give it out this Christmas season. If you want to share with a family member who you want to persuade to get into preparedness, this book would actually do it. All right, I've been giving great reviews about the book, saying that it's easy to read, it has important information, and that's why it's important for you to get it. All right, so I encourage you to go on there, MemoSurvivalStore.com. You can check out the store or you can get the book. All right, so let's get this podcast started because, as I've said, this information is really, really important. There's times, as you know, I don't like talking about politics too much, but there is times where the political events intersect with the preparedness of all of this, because it does influence, political things do influence how you should prepare, because a political means a war can break out, so you have to prepare for a war. The new weapons that have been coming out, you look at it and there's sanctions and there's treaties politically, and then because of that you have to prepare accordingly. So this would be one of those times where the political and the preparedness intersect, and I must talk about the political. Now, I don't care the way, whether you're left or you're right. Either way, you have to get this information and prepare accordingly, because we're seeing civil unrest in this country. Civil unrest that the left is worried about, civil unrest that the right is worried about. And if there's a civil war, both sides will suffer. Both sides have to eat. Both sides have to drink water. Both sides have family to protect. So it doesn't really matter whether you're left or right. You have to protect your family and be prepared. All right, so this article that I want to talk to you specifically about is about China, okay? But it does have to do with a future probable Biden administration, because I understand he is not president-elect, at least not yet. We are waiting for the results of all these lawsuits and everything that's going on. But let's just say that in January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden does become, the president-elect, or he becomes the president of the United States. There's a chain of events that will happen because of that administration. So we must prepare for it, even if it doesn't happen. That's the whole purpose of preparing. We prepare for future possible events that could happen, and we prepare accordingly even if they don't happen. All right, so this article is from SearHedge, and the reason that this article is very important is because the people that Joe Biden is picking for cabinet positions now, and for certain things that they want to do, certain roles, they're being picked now. And of course, the alternative media is picking every detail about them and saying this is why this is bad. The mainstream media is glorifying all of them and saying America is back, quote unquote. My point is that we must look and follow this trend, because we have seen the information that has come out in the media about China and the infiltration, which is something I'll be showing you here in just a second. But this, as a cabinet in the intelligence, is very important. Here's the headline. Biden's national security pick said U.S. should encourage China's rise, not contain it. As I mentioned, that's from SearHedge. Joe Biden's announced nomination for National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has some interesting and eyebrow-raising words on China a few years back. The comments are even more relevant now, as he's expected to assume this top cabinet position on the heels of Trump's ongoing pressure campaign and months-long trade war with China. The former staff member under Hillary Clinton, when she was Obama's Secretary of State, gave a 2017 speech, the content of which are once again making the rounds, wherein he said Washington should support China's rise as opposed to contain it. Quote, "We need to strike a middle course, one that encourages China's rise in a manner consistent with an open, fair, rules-based regional order," end quote, Sullivan said in the context of a think tank foreign policy event. Quote, "This will require care and prudent and strategic foresight, and maybe even more basically, it will require sustained attention. It may not have escaped your notice that these are not in ample supply in Washington right now," end quote. He further said, quote, "It needs to be about our ties to the region that creates an environment more conducive to a peacefully positive some Chinese rise," end quote, at the Lowley Institute event. He underscored during the 2017 lecture that a, quote, "thriving China," end quote, was in the end good for the global economy. Now, that is very important that we understand that he said that, because for one, we know, or at least it has been alleged, that Biden is owned by China. And if he's going to put people in control that pretty much are also in control of China, because pretty much you could say that China told Biden to appoint certain people, that are going to be friendly towards China and they're going to be pushing Chinese policies, then he would be a perfect pick. But there's several things that you need to listen to. For one, he is the national security advisor. He's going to be the national security advisor if there's a Biden administration. So that is important because then he has access to intelligence, then he can link to Beijing. Now, the other one is that he's talking about encouraging the growth of China. All right. So one of the things that I've shown you here in the past is that by 2024, China will surpass the United States economically in the next 10 to 12 years, as the Pentagon has actually, done the simulations. It could be that in the next 10 to 12 years, China will surpass the U.S. military, militarily. So as I've shown you in the past, and as I've talked about it, okay, it's very important that we pay attention to that, because we could possibly create a war to where we defeat China before they become stronger than we are. So we have timelines now, not only from the World Economic Forum, but also coming from the Pentagon, that we must pay attention to, and we still have time to prepare, even though there's a lot of Americans, millions of Americans, who are already experiencing their crappy defense scenario. All right, so I have a video for you that comes from True News, where it shows how cocky the Chinese are becoming. They're talking about their influence in Washington and in Wall Street, they're talking about it in the open. They're becoming so cocky, they're talking about it in the open, all right? So it's a few-minute clip, but pay really close attention to what he's talking about, how he's describing the influence that they have. Here's that video.
We are doing a live broadcast on the whole internet today, and it is said that 1 million people are watching it. So I have to control how much I can tell you. I can't betray others. Let's put it this way. In 2015, before the last visit of General Secretary Xi to the United States, we know that all our systems in the United States needed to work at warming things up, right? So one of our party systems, the way that system could help to warm things up in the United States, was public opinion. So it was arranged that the first edition of the English version of Xi Jinping's new book, Xi Jinping, The Governance of China, would be released in the U.S. before he visited the U.S. We would hold a book release event to help him build up the momentum. Who should do it? Just like today, they found out. They said to me, Di Dongsheng, you have a way with foreigners and are better at fooling them, right? Because they had seen how I fooled foreigners, and they thought it was very good. So they said, you act as the host and guest speaker. So it's very similar to our event today, where I'm the host and a guest speaker. So the venue for this event was already decided by the leader. He said it was next week, next Thursday, 3:30 p.m. Go to the most important politics and prose bookstore in the United States, 2650 Connecticut Avenue in Washington. It seems like the number. That is a professional bookstore. So we needed to go over there for the book launch. And we needed to hurry up to communicate with the store. We all know that the East and West work in different ways. You asked me to secure that venue on such short notice. It was tough. It turned out that the bookstore owner was very spoiled. He said, sorry, we cannot host you. Then I said, you tell me, which author booked this session? What did I mean by that? There's nothing that dollars can't handle, right? If I can't do it with one stack of dollars, I'll do it with two. Of course, that's my way of handling things. The Trump administration is in a trade war with us. So why can't we fix the Trump administration? Why between 1992 and 2016 did China and the U.S. use to be able to settle all kinds of issues? No matter what kind of crisis we encountered, the Yinhe incident, the bombing of the embassy, or the crashing of the plane, things were resolved in no time. We fix everything in 2 months. What is the reason? I'm going to throw out something, maybe a little bit explosive here. It's just because we have people at the top of America's core inner circle of power and influence. We have our old friends. Okay, so in fact, that is to say, to put it bluntly, for the past 30 years, 40 years, we have been utilizing the core power of the United States. As I said before, since the 1970s, Wall Street had a very strong influence on domestic and foreign affairs of the United States. So, we had a channel to rely on. But the problem is that after 2008, the status of Wall Street had declined. And more importantly, after 2016, Wall Street can't fix Trump. Why? It's very awkward. Trump had a previous soft default issue with Wall Street. So there was a conflict between them. But I won't go into details. I may not have enough time. So during the US-China trade war, they, Wall Street, tried to help. And I know that my friends on the US side told me that they tried to help, but they couldn't do much. But now we're seeing Biden was elected. The traditional elite, the political elite, the establishment, they're very close to Wall Street. So you see that, right? Trump has been saying that Biden's son has some sort of global foundation. Have you noticed that? Who helped him? Biden's son build the foundations. Got it? There are a lot of deals in all these. Then, so, at such a time, we use an appropriate way to express some goodwill. This is my personal understanding based on my limited professional background. If we understand this matter from the perspective of the international political economy, I think there is a tactical and political value in it.
All right, so that video is really important because there's several things that you can get out of it. All right, for one, he's saying that he will use money in order for him to get what he wants. He will bribe the politicians or whoever it is that needs to be bribed to get his way. And if that does not work, then he's going to use intimidation, blackmail, whatever it is, in order for him to get what he wants. And that's not just him, but, if that's how he thinks, imagine the people that are in the higher levels in government. Of course, they're saying that they're going to use whatever means necessary in order for them to bully people into doing what they want them to do. All right, so now, if the United States, if China has been waging this quiet war against the United States by influencing people, not just in the government, but also in society, what are they doing in the financial systems? I will tell you what they're doing, all right? What they're doing is that they're trying to dethrone the United States from being the world currency, reserve currency. Why? Okay? From that one event, several things would happen if the United States stops being the world's reserve currency. For one, as far as the United States is concerned, it would create hyperinflation here very, very quickly. It would make Venezuela look, nothing like we would see in the United States. Venezuela has been going through a very rough time for the past 7 years with hyperinflation. And they only owe about $160 billion. That's all they owe, okay? And even though that's a lot of money, if I had $160 billion, that would be freaking fantastic. But the point is that we owe $27 trillion in debt. So when you compare the debt of Venezuela and what caused their hyperinflation compared to what we have in the United States, they have no debt. Okay, we have a big amount of debt, and that would really devastate us. Just that one event. Okay, the other reason they want to pretty much become the world reserve currency is because they would have the ability to do what the United States does as far as sanctions go. All right, whenever another country does things that we don't like, then we just say, all right, here's a sanction not just on the country, but also on individuals. What that means is that they can no longer use dollars. They can no longer trade. Their bank accounts are frozen. A lot of things happen. They can make people's life very miserable if they get sanctioned by the United States. That's the power that China wants. All right. Not just that, but the United States no longer being the reserve world currency would have effects all throughout the world. All the nations that use the US dollar for trading, they would have to look for another one. Beijing would position itself. If they become the world reserve currency, then their yuan, or however you say it, will become so strong that the shift of power will go from the United States to from United States to China. Okay. Yes, we still have our nukes, we still have our military, but for how long? So that's why we're saying that the conflict will arise from that. Now, speaking of hyperinflation and no longer being the world reserve currency, I have this headline also from Zero Hedge, which is very important. Pay attention to it. Billionaire Ray Dalio holds Reddit AMA to discuss rise of China threats to dollar's reserve status. For the past few years, as Bridgewater, the Titanic hedge fund, mostly continued on autopilot with the computers handling most of the investing, the firm's founder and longtime leader, Ray Dalio, has been refining his thesis about the next major turning point in global history, which Delio believes will be precipitated by the growing tension between a rising China and a falling America. Empire's rise and fall is nothing new to history, Delio said. He even produced a helpful chart that illustrates the waxing and waning standing and influence of the world's greatest powers dating back to the 1500s. Using a handful of metrics measuring national performance in areas including education and innovation, Delio produced a chart breaking down this decline in American greatness, so to speak. Though declines in education and trade are in the lowest levels relative to history, other critical indicators, including innovation and technology and reserve status, which allows America to borrow so heavily without driving surging interest rates and inflation, have, according to Delio's analysis, only just turned over. Looking back across the vast sweep of history, Delio claims that dissolution of empire is almost always driven by a handful of factors, including unsustainable debt and money printing and growing political animosity and unrest. Sound familiar? Which is something that is happening in the United States today. Okay, so I'm going to be playing you a clip that I played in the past, but the reason that I want to show it to you is because it's very relative to this. But not only that, there's a lot of new listeners to this podcast. So, I'm pretty sure that y'all have not listened to this. If you have been here for a long time now, then, just hang on there. It's really important that you listen to it once again, because now that we have this piece of information, it becomes even more important, all the information that I'm sharing with you today. All right, so for the new people who are here, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Listen to this video.
The big thinker is Thucydides. Thucydides was the father and founder of history. So Thucydides' trap is the dangerous dynamic that occurs when a rising power, like Athens or Germany 120 years ago in the roll-up to World War I, or China today, threatens to displace a ruling power, the U.S., in the current situation after the end of a 20th century that's frequently called the American century. So when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling power, in general, poop happens. I look at the last 500 years, I find 16 cases, 1/6, in which a rising power threatens to displace a major ruling power. 12 of those cases end in war, 4 of them in not war. To say that war between the U.S. and China, therefore, in terms of the concept of Thucydides' trap, is inevitable, would be wrong on its face. 4 of the 16 cases was no war. So if you look at my chart, it's got 12 war cases and 4 no war cases. But to say that the odds are against us would not be an exaggeration.
All right, so now that I show you that video, we can understand where things are going. Whether we want it to or not, in the next 3 to 4 years, we could potentially have a nuclear exchange with China. When you really look at the news and you see things that is going on, you can really see that could happen a lot sooner than we anticipate. This could literally be months away, especially with all the information that's coming out about China right now. It could be said that China has been, they did acts of war by infiltrating the United States to the level that they have, by influencing the governors and the political establishment as they have. It could be said that was a declaration of war. Not just that, let's just think just on COVID-19. The intelligence community does say that, or the Five Eyes, they have come out and said that they're looking into whether or not the virus did come from Wuhan. And one of the new people who were appointed to the intelligence committee by Trump, he is saying that yes, the origins of COVID did come from Wuhan, and the Chinese government did suppress the information so it would spread all throughout the world, which of course have had great ramifications for the United States, economically, psychologically, and in society. So just the fact that that is happening, it could create war, because there has been people in government, in high key places, saying that Beijing keeping quiet about the virus, just that in itself, it's a declaration of war, or, it's acts of war. So what I want to show you here in this next clip that comes from Tucker Carlson, it's very important information, because you have to listen to it. That's where I'm going to be focusing, shifting the focus of all of this, all right? We talked about the political, as how it can drive it into the war cycle, or, war plans. But this will take the future into a whole other direction that a lot of people had not paid attention to. Here's that video.
It happened because they were the victim of theft. That's happening everywhere, including in the Pentagon. According to Ratcliffe, quote, China also steals sensitive U.S. defense technology to fuel President Xi Jinping's aggressive plan to make China the world's foremost military power. U.S. intelligence shows that China has even conducted human testing on members of the People's Liberation Army in the hope of developing soldiers with biologically enhanced capabilities. There are no ethical boundaries to Beijing's pursuit of power. Remarkable. We know where this is leading, and Ratcliffe's op-ed spells it out. Quote, Beijing is preparing for an open-ended period of confrontation with the United States. Washington should also be prepared. Leaders must work across partisan divides to understand the threat, speak about it openly, and take action to address it. John Ratcliffe is the director of national intelligence, the man with more intelligence before him than anyone on the globe apart from the president. We're happy to have him on tonight. Director, thanks so much for coming on.
Tucker, good to see you.
You spell this out so clearly that it made me wonder why the rest of us, so many in our public life, haven't been saying this for quite some time. You make it sound obvious.
Well, I think you did a good job of encapsulating why, Tucker. There are a lot of people who, for economic reasons, don't want China to be our greatest threat. There are a lot of people who, for political reasons, don't want China to be our greatest threat in America. But the intelligence doesn't lie. China is our greatest threat, and it's not even close. No other country has the capability of essentially taking away the American dream, and a specific plan to do so, and the intelligence is clear. So, Tucker, I wanted to use the unique vantage point that I have to make sure, as the Director of National Intelligence, my job is to warn the American people of threats, and there is no greater threat than China to America.
The most jarring part of the piece, I thought, was your description of the massive ramp-up of the Chinese military. And from your telling, not necessarily for defensive purposes. What do you think their aim is?
Well, again, dominate militarily, technologically, and economically. On the military front, they've already achieved having the largest navy of any country in the world. From a military force standpoint, the People's Republic of China has a military of 2 million. They want them to be the largest, and they also want them to be the strongest, which is why they're engaged in what you referenced, which is called gene editing, literally trying to alter the DNA, experimenting on DNA to make soldiers, sailors, and airmen stronger and more powerful.
That's horrifying. Do you think Beijing anticipates some kind of physical confrontation with the United States in the next several years?
Well, here's the funny thing, Tucker, is China knows at this point that the United States is still the world's superpower. They know they're catching us in all of those respects. They're banking on the fact that we're not going to do anything until they're superior in all those respects. Great generals always say it's better to fight downhill. Right now, the United States can fight downhill against China. We don't ever want to be in a position where we're looking up at China, and all of the plans that they have, all of the initiatives made in China, the Digital Silk Road, Belt and Road Initiative, those are all thin veneers and facades for which China is going around the world and essentially gaining the influence, power to become the world's superpower and supplant the United States in that role.
Very important video, because there's a lot of things in that video that we have to address. This is not just a linear problem. This problem is humongous. It has a lot of branches like a tree. And it doesn't really matter which branch you take. They all have the same end goal, either the destruction of America or a war with China, which, could potentially be the destruction of America. But the point is that, do the Chinese wait until we can no longer afford anything? Or would the Chinese wait until they are the superpower, the next superpower? And then we can no longer compete militarily or, financially. And then they take over the United States, because there are several things, out of this, you have to wonder, what does China gain from influencing the United States so deeply? Several things are in mind. And one of them, or the main one of them, is what every country wants and needs, which is food and water. Right now, China is suffering a lot because of their agricultural devastation. Okay, they are experiencing, in some places, drought. In some places, they're experiencing floods. And as we have known, if the dam that they have, I forget the name, but if the dam breaks, it's gonna flood a big portion. A lot of people will perish, and it will completely devastate their agricultural area. So, putting that in perspective, the time is ticking for them to be able to feed their people. If they can no longer feed their people will revolt. And it's 1.7 billion people or something like that against a handful of people on top. They understand that it doesn't really matter how totalitarian they are. If the people are desperate enough to where they no longer cherish their life, they will fight to the death to accomplish something that they will believe that will bring change. That's why it's important for China to start making moves now to take over the United States. Because I don't know if you know this, but China owns over 30 million acres of land in the United States. And there's not one area that they own. It's several areas all throughout the country. And the main reason is because since a lot of farmers have been defaulting because of COVID and other reasons, they are picking up those farms on cents on the dollar, a couple pennies on the dollar. So for them, it's becoming very cheap. And what they're doing is that they're growing the food and then they're sending it to China because they have to feed their people. Okay, they're having a lot of problems with water too. We are very abundant in water here in the United States. Yes, the West is about to go into a 100-year or 1,000-year drought, something like that. But the rest of the country will have plenty of water, God willing. That's if we don't destroy the environmental, if we don't destroy the environment by then, or we don't have a war that will destroy it. But one of the things that I want you to get out of that video is that he said that they're playing with editing or gene editing soldiers, or pretty much super soldiers, which is something that has come out to light several years ago, but not a lot of people talked about it. Now, in those days, it was conspiracy theories, even though head of states pretty much said that. Russia said that too. Now has come out from top officials in the U.S. government. They're saying that China is a bigger threat than Russia is. He did say that Russia is no chump, but when you compare China to Russia, China has a lot more money to throw around. Okay, so the next, or something that he also said, I forget this guy's name, Radcliffe or something like that. He did say they found public comments by Chinese scientists and Chinese generals who talk about their interest in applying biotechnology to the battlefield, and specifically using the CRISPR gene editing technology to manipulate human DNA in a way that can enhance performance. So imagine a sniper who can see twice as far as a normal human being, or a team of commandos that can get by on just 3 hours of sleep and have superhuman strength. Okay, that is something that they are working on. There's no longer a fiction, because as I'm going to be showing you here in just a second, it is alleged that the United States have deployed a type of super soldier that probably were experimenting with, that are taller, stronger, faster, and allegedly they do not feel pain, they do not feel fear, and they will just follow every command that they're given. Okay, what I want to show you here right now is a video from Vladimir Putin telling a group of youth how the future is going to look like by the time they get old enough, as far as the military application of gene editing goes. Here's that video. Oh no, excuse me, I'm sorry. I have to read to you what it says because it's all in Russian, but it has English subtitles. I will let you watch it, but I do have an audience in the podcast that do not have video, so I must read this out loud. All right, so give me just a second to pull it up here. And this means that a man has the opportunity to get into the generic code created by either nature, or as religious people would say, by the God. What kind of practical consequences may entail? This means that one can already imagine it. One may imagine that a man can create a man with some given characteristics, not only theoretically but also practically. He can be a genius mathematician, a brilliant musician, or a soldier. A man who can fight without fear, compassion, regret, or pain. As you understand, humanity can enter, and most likely it will, in the near future, a very difficult and very responsible period of its existence. And what I have just described might be the worse than the nuclear bomb. When do we do something, whatever we do? I want to reiterate again, we must never forget about the ethical foundations of our work. And the reason that he said that is because not only are we using that technology, are we not only exploring the technology, but it's also China doing that. Russia is doing it as well. He did say this to a group of people: whoever becomes the leader in this field will become the ruler of the world. Why is that important? Because now our future is looking a whole lot different than we once anticipated. How would it look like? How would our future look like with gene-edited soldiers? But not only that, where the robotic technology also is so advanced that we have killer robots as we see in Terminator. What if we combine both a super soldier that has a computer chip in its head with very advanced artificial intelligence? That future is pretty much mind-blowing. Okay, if China is working on gene editing soldiers to where they feel no pain, no compassion, or regret, and all they do is follow orders, how would the future look like? That's what he said. That's what the leader of Russia, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, said. Whoever becomes the leader in this sphere will become the ruler of the world. Because whoever wins this war will be the ruler forever and ever, amen, until Jesus comes back. That might be one of the biggest reasons why Jesus said that in the end time, things would be so bad that they had never been that bad before, and they will never be again. Let's not forget that when the flood happened, it's because of all the gene editing that was going on in those days, with all the chimeras, with all the animals, with all the even humans. But what if what was in those days, nothing compared to what can happen now? Because as far as we know, they didn't have artificial intelligence in Noah's days, but they do now. What if what Elon Musk, not only has he been warning us about, but he's also working on, to where he has the neural link, where he can connect us to the internet. Okay, what if that, combining the artificial intelligence through computer chips that will be connected to the internet, and a super soldier becomes something like a god, or a group of people who will pretty much turn on the people that created them and start ruling us. That's why I said that a future for our kids is going to look a lot more different than we will ever imagine. We don't know to what kind of depths we're about to go into. That's what he said. That's what Vladimir Putin said, that we are about to enter the most responsible time in our existence as humanity. Now, what is the United States trying to do about this? My last headline for this first part video, because this video already ran 42 minutes, and that's before I put in all the videos that I had already showed you. The last podcast, or the last headline that I have for you is this: Congress wants a Manhattan Project for military artificial intelligence. That's from military.com. Using the Manhattan Project as a model, the United States must undertake and win the artificial intelligence race by leading in the invention and deployment of AI while establishing the standards of its public and private use, the report authors wrote. Although the Department of Defense has increased investment in AI and established the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center to assist with the transition and deployment of AI capabilities, cultural resistance to its wider adoption remains. Congress and Department of Defense must take additional actions to overcome these barriers. And the reason that they have to do that is because even if us, as the United States, citizens, we don't want that to happen, China will do it. That will force our government to, use ultra secret methods to develop it and advance it. Because if we stop it, and China or Russia come out with super soldiers, with AI thinking and super strength and everything, then we are going to be ruled by them. And I'm not talking about the flag. I'm not talking about Russia or China. We're going to be ruled by whoever creates, we're going to be ruled by the created, if that makes any sense. We're going to be ruled by the soldiers. So that's why it's important for us to pay attention to this. That's why it's important for us to prepare, because I do see a war coming to the United States or a war going to China over this. Forget about the political implications of everything that's been going on. I do believe that if the United States feels like we are losing the race to develop a superhuman or a super soldier, that we would nuke China, we would nuke Russia, and we would probably go into a nuclear holocaust. Never mind the fact that they would probably not even be able to destroy any labs that were created in superhumans. That's what our future kind of looks like. That's why it's important for us to understand AI right now. Because, one of the things that a lot of preppers try to do is that they want to get off the grid. But if we get off the grid, we're going to be ruled by people like that. Because as history has shown us in the past, the society that has the better technology is always ruling the society that does not have the better technology. It happened to the Aztecs. It happened to the Native Americans. It happened pretty much to the Western world when it was colonized. As far as I remember in my history lessons, the reason that they were able to win the colonization is because they had weapons that Indians didn't have, or Native Americans didn't have, that Aztecs didn't have, that other people didn't have. And that also included military advantages and stuff like that. But anyways, the point is that we must not corrupt our souls, but also we must not give in either. See what I'm saying? So the preparedness for this is that war is coming. And even if war is not coming and China wins the United States without firing a single shot, then being ruled by an oppressive communist country is also coming. Either way, it's very probable that the destruction of America will be here in the next several years. Because China, not only do they have plans to infiltrate the United States government and the local government and society, they also want to eliminate the American people, which is going to be part of the next podcast. Because on the next podcast, what what I want you to understand, and what I want to underline, is that they will do genocide in order for them to meet their end goal. They will do genocide in order to meet their end goal. It is not something that has not occurred in the past. In China's history, if I'm not mistaken, the last time that when the Communist Party took over, 80 million people died in China. 80 million. What can they do in order for them to be able to destroy the United States? There are several things. One of them is an EMP. Even if they do, it's just a cyber attack, so they don't have to rebuild the infrastructure. It could do the same. It could have the same effect, but there's more of a possibility for a brilliant United States anti-hacker, whatever they may be called, for them to reverse the civil attack or the cyber attack, and bring the lights back on. But an EMP would make sure that those systems never come back on, and it would just be a matter of time before all of this, as we know the United States for, will be gone in 24 months. Let's not forget the Deagle report does say that by 2025, there's only going to be about 100 million Americans left here. And I would dare to say that would be the Americans who are prepared. Because there's about, if I'm not mistaken, about 5 million preppers in the United States. And those are the ones that have actually come out and said that they're preppers. We don't know how many more are actually prepped. But the point is that even if there weren't that many preppers, there's a lot of militias, and those militias could try to take over. There would be different powerhouses all throughout the United States. Not only that, we have also the risk of all the terrorist cells that are here. And not only that, we also have the cartels just out of the border who would see the opportunity to gain territory. So there's a lot of things that we must prepare for. That is the reason why we have to have a prepper community strong enough to be able to defend against all those threats, and not only that, to continue this United States of America, even if it gets here with an EMP, to have a prepper community who will uphold the Constitution, who will carry on the Constitution. And I want to be part of that, and I want to be that community. So if you want to be part of that, please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channels, whatever social media that you may be using, that you may be listening to this through. Subscribe there. Share with your friends and family, because now is the time. Now we have the opportunity to become a very close network of preppers who will come together, who will prep together, who will be there if anything happens. If you want to be part of that, let me know. Let's subscribe to this channel, like these videos, share this information with other preppers, because now I'm making the call to all preppers out there for us to come together and be ready for whenever anything like this happens. Please watch the next video because it's very important. If you thought this information here was important, the next one is even more important, because it will show how in everyone's heart, in every people's heart, there is the possibility of genocide in their heart, especially if they're trained to do it. So I'll leave you with that. Please share this podcast. Please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. And always be ready, because we don't know what could happen at any moment. All right? So again, my name is Jose Prado. Always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.